Put your seatbelts on and get ready for the ride. We're the freaking New York Jets, so we're built for this shit.
Hello, welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today is Tuesday, September 2nd. Hopefully everybody's having a good day so far today. This is episode 617 of the In the Trenches with Gang Green podcast. I thank you, as always, for joining me. For those tuning in on YouTube, make sure to please like and subscribe. Of course, appreciate all of those tuning in on all the different audio podcast platforms. And today I've got my full 2025 New York Jets season preview. We'll break down stat predictions, both offensively, defensively, individual players on each side of the football, rankings for the offense and the defense, as well as my prediction at the end of this video. Always one of my favorite episodes to make every single season. Couple days away from kickoff September 7th out at MetLife Stadium, the New York Jets and the Pittsburgh Steelers to open up the 2025 NFL season, open up the Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji era. I am fired up. We'll obviously have you covered here the rest of the week into the weekend with all of the week one coverage. But before that begins, we got to take a look at the entire season and predict and take a look at what to expect from this New York Jets team here in 2025. Obviously, the biggest storylines, before we get into numbers and Justin Fields and the offense and all that, the biggest storylines coming in, of course, are Aaron Glenn, first-time coach, this new regime, this coaching staff, what they look like, how this team comes out in these games, if you're really seeing a culture shift, really hoping that this team under Aaron Glenn is able to build an identity running the football. That is the expectation, but being physical, being competitive, all of those different things. This was a very soft unit. It was a country club environment under Robert Saleh and, of course, Jeff Ulbrich during parts of last year and even previously earlier on in the Robert Saleh regime, in the Robert Saleh tenure. It was a soft culture. It was a country club environment. There was no accountability. The team would get beat, out of the gate, slow starts, bad tackling, struggle against the run, could never get the run game going. You want to see with Aaron Glenn, one of the biggest storylines, one of the biggest things to look for this season is, can this team have an identity of being a physical, competitive football team, holding players accountable, being that CEO type of coach where you're able to hold guys accountable, guys respect you, players want to be coached, want to be taught, which they weren't getting that under Robert Saleh, the previous regime. We've seen some positive signs from that so far in training camp. And even just more so, be a team that you can really see get better week in and week out. But more importantly, be a team that really lays the foundation here moving forward onto what should be expected out of an Aaron Glenn team. Obviously, the other big storyline, you look at Justin Fields, big opportunity for him. This is his chance. This is his last opportunity he'll get to be handed the starting job. If it doesn't work out here, not that he's going to be out of the NFL, but he's not going to get another starting opportunity right away. It was the right move to go with Justin Fields, of course. We talked about it all the time throughout the offseason. Once you moved on from Aaron Rodgers, to bring in Justin Fields and to go with the younger, higher upside, best case scenario, he's your long-term fit. Worst case scenario, you're drafting a quarterback in 2026. He was the right piece to bring in. In a perfect world, he takes a Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield type jump. Worst case scenario, you're drafting a quarterback in 2026 and the Fields experiment doesn't work. But it was the right move. And he, of course, has all the eyes on him. And it's a big spot for him here because it's his last real opportunity from a starting perspective to make his mark in the NFL, third team now in 5 years. So those are just some of my initial thoughts, what to look for. Aaron Glenn, Justin Fields, those are the biggest storylines, new regime, new coaching staff, all that stuff. You want to see some semblance of a culture legitimately being built throughout the season. There's been a lot of positives so far, but ultimately the way you build cultures, ultimately the way you build winning cultures is by winning and having success on the field. The talk off the field, training camp, the practices, that's all good. You got to go out there and win. And that's what we hopefully see this season with this New York Jets team. Now, I want to break it down. We'll start on the offensive side of the football. We'll start with the passing game. We'll start with Justin Fields specifically. And then we'll break down the receivers, the passing game, yards, stats for each of them. Then I'll get into the run game. And then I'll get into just kind of where I think the Jets offense ranks, where I think they'll rank passing, rushing wise. And then we'll flip on over to the defensive side of the football. So we'll start here with Justin Fields. A lot of talk about Justin Fields and where you expect him to end up this season from a statistical perspective. And all of these numbers were just going to play out across a 17-game pace. Now, as Fields plays 17 games, he has never done that before. You're probably looking more so 14, 15 games, and Tyrod maybe has to step in and play a game or two. But across the 17-game slate, I think a good way to gauge what Justin Fields can do and where you look at where he ends up with yards, can this be a guy when you break down what is going to be needed for the New York Jets to win football games, to be competitive in football games? Can Fields go out there and on average across the 17-game slate put up anywhere from 180 to 190 to 195 yards a week passing on top of what he provides as a rusher? And if he can do that, on average, again, there is going to be outliers both positively and negatively. There's going to be weeks where Fields really struggles. He might only pass for 120 yards, but there also might be weeks where he goes out there and throws for 200 plus and has another 100 on the ground, and you see the flashes of how this guy can be a franchise quarterback, which he has shown through the first 4 years of his career. He just hasn't done it consistently. So what I did with Justin Fields is I averaged it out. I have him throwing 301 pass completions this year on 475 attempts. So that's a 63.4% completion percentage for 3,315 yards, which is 195 yards per game, 6.9 yards per completion. I have him at 19 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. And I think that is realistic from a pass game perspective. In his career, he's averaged 7 yards per attempt. He'll be at 6.9 this season. The 3,315 yards would be the first time he hits over 3,000. And while that number might seem crazy, it's really not when you put it into what the rest of the league does and what you would ask him to do. 3,313 or 3,315 yards is 195 yards per game, and the 475 pass attempts is significantly less than what we saw last season. So I think those realistic are numbers that we could see from Justin Fields this season. So complete 63.4% of his passes, 3,315 yards. It's 195 yards per game, 6.9 yards per completion, 19 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. I think he's just under the 20 touchdown mark. Now, when you look at Fields from a rushing perspective, I would love to see him go off for 1,000 yards this year as a runner. He did, of course, a couple years ago in Chicago, where he went off in 2022 for 1,143 yards, 8 touchdowns on 160 carries. I have him a little bit lower than that. I think he's going to be anywhere in the range of 750 to 900. I think in that kind of 150-yard range, anywhere in that, I can see Justin Fields producing this season. So I went with 165 carries, 855 yards, 5.2 yards per carry, and 8 touchdowns on the ground. So you talk about a solid Justin Fields season and a season from Justin Fields where week in and week out, if he does this and these numbers total out to this, the Jets are going to have a chance to win football games week in and week out. This is what you're going to want to see from Justin Fields, and I think is a realistic expectation for Justin Fields. Total, you're going to have a 4,000-yard passer in terms of rush yards and pass yards totaled. That's 4,170 yards total. 27 touchdowns this season from Justin Fields. 855 on the ground, 3,315 through the air, 195 yards per game through the air. That's my Justin Fields 17-game prediction, 63.4% completion percentage. And I'll talk more about rankings in a little bit, but that puts you middle of the pack or bottom half of the league in passing. But when you tally in the rushing, you're going to kind of be that middle of the pack type of offense. So those are the Justin Fields stats. Now, we of course have to get 3,315 pass yards from the receivers. So for Garrett Wilson, he'll lead the way again. I have him at 97 receptions this season on 145 targets, 1,190 yards, 12.3 yards per reception, and 7 touchdowns. You look at what Garrett Wilson did last year. He had another big season, another 1,000-yard season. Second time he eclipsed 1,100 yards. He had 1,100 his first year, and then another season of over 1,100 last year. I think he'll just be a tick under the 100 reception mark, but I think yards-wise, he'll have his most he's had in a season. I'll go 1,190. I don't think he quite eclipses 1,200. I think he'll be just under 1,200. From a touchdown perspective, I think he finds the end zone a good amount again this year. I think they're going to look his way a lot in the red zone, a lot more than they've looked his way the previous 3 seasons where he's only had 14 touchdowns in 3 years. He had 7 touchdowns last year. I think he follows that up with another 7 touchdown campaign this year and has over 1,000 yards comfortably. Again, there's a lot of people that look at Garrett Wilson and say, oh, he's going to have a really down year. The quarterback situation is not good, but people forget for some reason he was able to put up 1,000 yards with the likes of Zach Wilson, Tim Boyle, Trevor Siemian, Joe Flacco. Justin Fields is far better than those quarterbacks. So if Garrett Wilson can go out there and put up 1,000 yards with Boyle, Siemian, and Zach Wilson, he can go out there and put up comfortably over 1,000 yards with Justin Fields at quarterback. Even if it's not for a full 17, Tyrod, if he's got to come out and play a couple games, is better than any of those other options. So those are the numbers I have for Garrett Wilson. It'll be another big year for him. My second leading receiver, I think it'll be Mason Taylor. I have him at 55 receptions on 75 targets for 575 yards, 10.4 yards per completion, and 5 touchdowns. This is a player that's going to play a big role in this offense as a rookie. I think the Jets are going to utilize the tight ends a lot. They did in Detroit. Tanner Angstra in that background. Mason Taylor is a big piece. Sure hands, had very sure hands at LSU. Reliable option, consistent option. I think this is a really good starting point for Mason Taylor in year number 1, if these are his numbers. And then year 2, year 3, moving forward, that's where you hope he can kind of take that jump of, okay, 650, 700 yards. I don't know if Mason Taylor will ever be that 800, 900-yard type of player, but consistently, can he be a 650, 700-yard receiver? 100%. But for his rookie year, you tell me he has 55 receptions, finds the end zone 5 times for 575 yards. I think that's a really good starting point. He's going to be used a lot. Him and Fields had a good connection while he was healthy throughout the spring and the summer. Obviously, had the high ankle sprain, so missed some time, but had a very good, strong offseason, summer, preseason, all that stuff as a rookie. He comes in here, I think, is the number 2 in terms of yards behind Garrett Wilson. In terms of number 3, I think it'll be Breece Hall. 48 receptions, 63 targets, 445 yards, 9.3 yards per reception. And I think he finds the end zone twice as a receiver. Breece, Mason Taylor, Garrett, those are your 3-headed monster. We've seen them use Breece a lot during camp and the drag route concepts. I think you're going to see 2 backfield sets with both Breece and Braylon Allen to keep the defense guessing. Their ability to use Breece Hall this year in the passing offense is going to be so pivotal to this team's success on offense because his ability as a receiver has not been utilized nearly enough. And you add him into the mix now much more than he's been in the mix in his first couple years of his NFL career. It's another weapon added, and it's another piece that you're going to need because of the lack of the wide receiver, true wide receiver 2 behind Garrett Wilson, where Mason Taylor and Breece Hall have to fill those gaps. I look at Breece Hall as the Jahmyr Gibbs type in Detroit. The way the Lions offense is structured, it's been Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, Jahmyr Gibbs. The way the Jets are structured, I think it's Garrett Wilson, your number one receiver, your tight end, your running back. So that's where I have at Breece Hall, 445 yards, 48 receptions, 60-plus targets, and I think he'll find the end zone a couple times as well. Finally here, for my rounding out my top four, Josh Reynolds, I think will be your fourth receiver essentially in terms of production. 40 receptions, 60 targets, 420 yards, 10.5 yards per reception, 3 touchdowns. You don't love Josh Reynolds as the number 2 receiver, but we all knew this was coming. They haven't added anybody else. Who knows if they will add anybody else? I don't think they will. I think the amount they're going to pass this year, I think the way they're going to distribute the football with Mason Taylor and Breece Hall, the Jets aren't valuing wide receiver 2 as high as I think many of the fans are. So Reynolds is your number 2, but essentially your number 4 pass catcher. So I think he's going to be in that low 400-yard range. When you look at Josh Reynolds in his career, this is a player that's put up 3,127 yards in 9 seasons in the NFL. You average that out, it's slightly below 400 yards per season. Now, there is a couple seasons in there that, he didn't play a full season. Last year, he only played 9 games, split between Denver and Jacksonville. So there is a little bit, those numbers are a little skewed, but throughout his career, he's been anywhere from like a 300 to a 600 receiver guy. He's never been more than that. So I think he's kind of in the middle there at 420 yards. So where we stand right now with Fields is 301 completions, 3,315 yards. That's how I think it'll be spread out amongst those 4. So remaining here, we have 685 yards, 61 receptions, 132 targets, and 2 touchdowns. Out of those remaining numbers, you're going to have to split those between Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis. They'll get their touches in the receiving game, plus the other receivers, Allen Lazard, Arian Smith. You want to throw a Stone Smart in there, a Jelani Woods. How much does Ruckert even get the ball? Arian Smith. Those 685 yards are going to be mixed out amongst those players. I could see it anywhere from 150 to 200 being split between Braylon and Isaiah Davis. And then you have about, 485 yards left there. You then split that between Lazard gets a 200, Arian Smith with, let's say, 250 or 200, and then Stone Smart gets involved a bit. Jelani Woods gets involved a bit. I'm not really expecting a ton of production receiving-wise from any of these backup tight ends. I think, sure, they'll have a couple completions, couple receptions here and there, but I wouldn't surprise me if neither of those guys even crack 100. So it's those top 4, and then after that, you're looking at Braylon, Isaiah Davis, Arian Smith, Lazard, any of the backup tight ends, Tyler Johnson throw in the mix as well. And that's how you kind of round out, I expect anyway, how you round out the bottom half of these pass catchers. Say Braylon has 130, say Davis maybe has a touch below 100 at an 80 or 90. Arian Smith has 150 to 200, let's say. Lazard, 250 to 300, and then sprinkle in some Stone Smart receptions, sprinkle in some Jelani Woods or Jeremy Ruckert yards, and you round out the 685 and the 61 receptions that way. But it's headlined by your 4 in Garrett Wilson, Mason Taylor, Breece Hall, Josh Reynolds, leading the way there for Fields in the passing game. Now, in terms of where I think the Jets will rank from a passing offense, you look at, I took the passing offense numbers that I predicted here, and I looked at last year and where they would rank. So in terms of completions, it would be 31st. Attempts would be 31st as well. So it's clear they're a run-first team. They're not going to throw a ball a ton. And those attempts, those completions would both rank second lowest in the NFL. That's not a surprise. And when I made this prediction, that's something that I expected. Now, more importantly, the more important numbers is the yards per game, and touchdowns. So the 3,315 yards from Justin Fields would rank 26th in the NFL. Those 195 yards per game would rank 26th. And the 19 touchdown passes, a little bit on the lower end, they would rank 30th. So overall, from a yards perspective, which is how you tally total offense, they would be the 26th rank passing offense in football, which is, I think, to be expected when you look at the layout of this team and how much they're going to run the ball, and more importantly, the success they're going to have running the football. Anywhere from 23 to 27 in passing offense, but more importantly, it's what this team does from a rushing perspective, where that's where you get, ultimately, you average the two out and you're middle of the pack on offense. So moving now to the rushing side of things. Like I said earlier, Justin Fields, I think, has 165 carries this year for 855 yards, 5.2 yards per carry, 8 touchdowns. So those are Fields' rushing stats. We've already talked about those. In terms of Breece Hall, I'm a lot more higher on Breece Hall than a lot of Jet fans. I know a lot of Jet fans are down and out. I don't understand any of the trade talks around Breece Hall. I think a lot of the trade discussion, trades that have brought up around Breece Hall is simply the season is almost here and the Jets have not had enough drama around them this offseason. It's been such a quiet offseason. I feel the whole Breece Hall trade stuff is just being put out there just to create conversation, just to create reaction, because for the first time in a while, there's nothing to talk about with the Jets in terms of trading a player or a holdout. There's none of that. And I think the Breece Hall trade stuff comes in the form of just trying to formulate a story just to put it out there because there is no other story with the Jets. I don't buy any of the trade talk with Breece Hall for 1 second. It doesn't make sense to me to trade him. The role he's going to play in this offense, sure, you want to say he might have a down year as a rusher, fine. But the role he's going to play as a receiver in this offense is huge. It's massive. To just trade away Breece Hall and then leave a hole from a receiving perspective on this offense that desperately needs talent that can catch the football makes no sense. So I heavily believe in Breece Hall this year. And I think he surpasses 1,000 yards. I do. I think he does that for the first time in his career. I have Breece Hall at 230 carries for 1,025 yards, 4.5 yards per carry, and 5 touchdowns. I don't think he's going to go out there. I'm not the Breece Hall. Not going to say Breece Hall is going to put up 1,300, 1,415 rush yards. No. I think he just surpasses 1,000. I think he has a very good season. And more importantly, I think you look at Breece from the all-purpose yard perspective and you tally the 1,025 rush yards and the 445 passing yards, and you're looking at just a tick under a 1,500-yard all-purpose yard running back, which is a really, really good season. Running behind this offensive line, I think having Fields in the backfield with him is also a big deal. Those read options, the RPOs, all of those things, Fields and Breece kind of take the attention off of each other. And that is an opportunity to keep the defense guessing. I think you're going to see a lot of 2 running back sets. I think that's going to benefit Breece. It'll also benefit Braylon. It'll benefit this run game as a whole. This team is set up to be really good running the football, and leading the way, it'll be Breece Hall. I think he's over 1,000 yards on 230 carries, which will be the most amount of carries he's had in his career. And I think he hits the end zone 5 times. In terms of the other 2 running backs, Braylon Allen, I have at 115 carries, 495 yards, 4.3 yards per carry, and 4 touchdowns. To put into perspective just how much more Braylon Allen will be used this year, thankfully, assuming everything goes as planned. Last season, he only had 92 carries for 334 yards. I have him at 115 carries. So you're looking at about 20 to 25 more carries, which is almost, for a number 2 running back, almost 2 more games worth of carries from Braylon Allen this year. So expect a very big season from him. Expect him to play a big role in the red zone. I have him with 4 touchdowns this season. I think he's going to eat up a lot of touchdowns. As a matter of fact, I think Breece will probably have a lot of touchdowns. I don't want to say stolen, but Breece will probably have a lot of touchdowns taken in the red zone from Braylon Allen. Like if Braylon Allen wasn't there, Breece probably has 7 or 8 touchdowns. But with Braylon Allen and the short down and distance, the physical running style, in the red zone, I think he's going to rack up a lot of opportunities to score, and I think he's going to take advantage. So I have him with the 4 touchdowns there. And I also just think, too, the short down distances, not only do you have Fields and even Andrew Beck, who they've used before in some of the practices, but Braylon Allen, another guy, short down and distance, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1 situations, go under shotgun, go under center, give it to him, and hopefully convert a lot of those short down and distance situations, which is what Braylon Allen has used so well in, and the Jets didn't use him in those situations nearly enough last year. And then finally, Isaiah Davis, 25 carries, 110 yards, 4.4 yards per carry, 1 touchdown. I could even see a little bit more than 25. I could even see like 30 to 35 carries from Isaiah Davis. And maybe I'm shorting him a little bit, but I think anywhere from the 25 to like 40 carry range, you want to throw 45 out there. I think anywhere in that range is pretty good for what to expect from Isaiah Davis, because you also have to take into account the carries that Justin Fields is going to have. Right? He's got 165 himself, so a lot of carries that with a non-mobile quarterback that would probably go to Isaiah Davis and even Braylon Allen are going to go to Justin Fields. So you also have to put that. You essentially have 4 running backs. Kene Nwangu, I'm not factoring into this. So essentially 4 runners here in terms of what Fields can do as well on the ground. So as a rushing offense total, I have him at 535 carries on the year between the 4 of them, which is 3rd in the NFL. And I think that's right in range to where this team should be at. I think comfortably, easily in the top 5 from a just pure volume standpoint of the amount of times they're going to run the football. That across 17 games is 31.4 carries per game, which is significantly more than last year. And I'm going to compare the side-by-side in a second here before we get to the defense. It really is crazy when you look at how different this offense should be this season. 2,485 rush yards as a team. I have them having this season between Davis, Brees, Braylon, and Fields. That's 7th in the NFL. That would rank 7th in the NFL based off of last year's rankings. That comes out to 146.7 rush yards per game, also 7th. 4.6 yards per carry as a team, and 18 touchdowns, which was tied for 8th in the NFL. So I have them as a comfortably top 10 rushing offense in football. And I think that'll be led by a top 10 offensive line, top 10 run blocking offensive line. Do I think this is a top 5, top 3 rushing offense? No. But top 10 inside the top 8, definitely. I think anywhere from that 6 to 8 range is realistic. I have them here at 7. That's where they would have ranked last year with these numbers. I think that's a very good landing spot. And in terms of the volume, I think they're top 5. I think they'll be one of the most rushing offenses. I think they're going to run nearly to the top of the league. Number 2, number 3, number 4 in the NFL in terms of how many times they actually run it. And in the production, I think will be right around 7th in the NFL. And you look at the Lions last year, they were number 3 in carries. So Tanner Engstrand coming there, that background, a little bit of that offense here. You look at Baltimore, Philly, all those teams right near the top. Jets are going to emulate a lot of those offenses. You really can get a good grasp of where they're going to be at. So when you look at this offense, 26th passing offense in football is where I have them at, but I have them being the 7th ranked rushing offense in football. You tally those two together and you get an even 16th ranked offense, which is right where I think many Jet fans expect them to be and right where I think many Jet fans would want them to be realistically. Sure, we would love them to be number 1 in every category, but being realistic, this is going to be a passing offense that's going to be in the 20s, somewhere from the 23 to 27 range, and a rushing offense that should be inside the top 10, at worst, top 12. Like at worst, I think they're just outside the top 10. They should not be anywhere further than that. And I think realistically, when you look at inside the top 10, anywhere from 6 to 8, I put them at 7. So you tie that out, it's the 16th ranked offense in football, 32 teams, that's right in the middle. I think 17th, 15th, 14th, anywhere around that, I think you're okay with it if you're a Jet fan. Average offensively, and then your defense and your special teams being the top 10, top 12 units, that's your path to success this season for Aaron Glenn and the New York Jets. Now, just some numbers that I want to share before we move on to the defense, just to show you the difference in offenses and just really how much they abandoned the run last year. So I have them running total on offense 1,010 plays. That's total between the attempts, pass attempts, and the carries. Came out to 1,010 plays. Last year, the Jets ran 970 plays. 53% of the plays this year I have being run plays for the New York Jets. I have them passing 47% of the time. To give you the difference last year, the Jets passed 63% of the time and only ran 37% of the time. So I have them running about 17% more and 17% less passing this season. Just crazy when you put the side by side. On average, I have the Jets running 31 times per game, passing 27. In 2024, they ran 36 passes per game and only ran 21 times per game. So a 15 pass to run difference last year, which is unacceptable. In total, the Jets last year threw 607 times. I have them throwing 475 times this year. That's 132 less passes. On top of that, I have them running 535 times this year. They only ran the ball 363 times last year. That's 172 more run plays. So what I essentially did was here, and I did these numbers at the end, and we all know this as Jet fans, but you look at this Jets offense, you're essentially looking at this team and saying they're going to throw the ball about 130 times less, but run about 170 times more than they did. And that's right, assuming they run more plays than they did last year. They might run 970 plays. It all depends on how the offense is and the drives and 3 and outs and all that. But just based off of this, you're going to run about 100 times more and pass about 100 times less, which is really, really crazy when you just break down some of these numbers. They were 31st in attempts last year. With the way this projects this season, they would be 3rd in the carries. 31st in pass attempts and 3rd in carries is how I project them being this year. Last year, they were 5th in pass attempts, 32nd in carries. They were dead last in carries. They ran the ball last year 363 times. The next closest team was the Raiders with 380. That was 17 more carries. That's almost a full game worth of carries that the Jets were behind the next closest team in the NFL in terms of running the football. I also have them, of course, at the 2,485 rush yards. That's 146.7 rush yards per game. Last year, the Jets had 1,561 rush yards, only 91.8 yards per game. So not only did they not crack 100 last season, they didn't even sniff 2,000 rush yards as a whole. Both of those ranked 31st in the NFL. I think you look at this season, they should be well over 100 rush yards per game. And in total, I think they'll have 924 more rush yards than last year, almost 1,000 more rush yards than last year, which is really a wide margin, and about 54.9. So round up about 55 more yards per game on the ground than they did per game last season. So just to show you the discrepancy and how much more of a run-heavy team approach, run-heavy offense this will be than what we saw last year, which was an aging Aaron Rodgers throwing 40 to 50 times a game to try and get his 500th touchdown towards the end of the season when the Jets were losing games scoring 10 points, which was, of course, a hard watch. Moving on now to the defensive side of the football. I broke this up with sacks and interceptions. So not getting into the whole tackles and tackles for loss and everything like that. Take the 2 big statistical categories and tally them up here and how I see the production being distributed throughout the team. So from a sack perspective, the Jets last season had 43 sacks, which was 11th in the NFL. So outside the top 10. In 2023, I bring up 2023 just because that's when this defense was elite and at its peak. 48 sacks. They were 8th in the NFL. So comfortably inside the top 10, about had 5 more sacks. And I usually like to look at the last 2 seasons to kind of gauge, okay, last year they struggled. They were really good the year prior. Where is a realistic spot this season? So I think you look at this Jets defense this year and the amount of times they're going to blitz and just the pieces they have on this defense, schematically what they're going to do with Aaron Glenn and Steve Wilks. I think you look at 45 to 46. I have 46 sacks for this defense this season, which would have put them tied for 6th in the NFL last year. And I think that's a realistic spot for what to expect here in year number 1 in this defense. Will McDonald, I think, leads the way. 12 sacks. I think the over-under was somewhere around like 11.5 for him. He had 10.5 last year. He's a sack monster. I mean, heck, week 1 against Broderick Jones, he's got to be licking his chops. There's a good opportunity he can go out there and have a sack, 1.5 sacks, 2 sacks in week number 1 for Will McDonald. He's going to have a huge season. 12 sacks. He'll lead the way. I think he takes another step. From that perspective, the biggest thing with Will McDonald now is being better against the run, putting on some size this offseason. Hopefully he can get to that. So Will McDonald leads the way with 12. I have Quinnen at 8. Quinnen the last couple years has been down from a sack standpoint. A lot of people in the fan base have been upset about that. A lot of people look at sacks as the end-all be-all. He's only had 11.5 in the last 2 years since his 12 in 2022. I think Quinnen gets back on the sack track, if you will, in terms of putting up a much more respectable number than 5 or 6. I think he'll put up 8. I think having Harrison Phillips next to him is big. He was playing next to the likes of Solomon Thomas, Javon Kinlaw last season. He had no help. There was no threat, no fear with those guys. Harrison Phillips is a legitimate, experienced, run-stopping, take the attention off of Quinnen, nice defensive tackle number 2. I also just think with the amount of blitzing that the Jets are going to have this season, that is going to open up opportunities for Quinnen and everybody on this defensive line to get home and make the life miserable for opposing quarterbacks. So I think Quinnen has a nice, respectable 8-sack season, which will be up from his previous 2 years where he was at 5.5 and 6. 8 would be the second most he's put up in a single season. So between Will McDonald and Quinnen Williams, I have 20 sacks. So we got to get 26 more sacks. Jermaine Johnson, I think, has 5. I thought about putting him at 6. He had 7.5 in 2023. The biggest thing with Jermaine Johnson is I think you have to expect a little bit of a slow start, and that's probably going to last 2 to 4 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, maybe more optimistic, where it's not going to be until Miami, the Dallas game, where you really start to feel his impact again coming off the torn Achilles. Right? The Jets aren't going to throw him out there week 1 fully, full amount of snaps and all that stuff. Like they're going to ease him back into it. So with that, I think he has 5 sacks. I think he's just under the 6 to 7 to 8 sack mark, but I think 5 coming off a torn Achilles, hopefully playing all 17 games and really seeing him pick it up after the first couple weeks. That's a really good season for Jermaine Johnson. So that's 25 sacks between those 3. Quincy Williams, I think, has 5. Jamian Sherwood, I think, has 4. So between the linebackers, I think you're getting 9 sacks. I've talked about Quincy and Jamian Sherwood a lot in terms of what they bring from a blitzing, what they should bring from a blitzing standpoint, and the amount of times that the New York Jets are going to blitz this year. But not just that, they're going to blitz the linebackers a ton. And Quincy Williams and Jamian Sherwood are 2 guys that should benefit big time from it. Quincy Williams in his career, when he's been asked to blitz, has done a really good job. In his 237 career pass rush snaps, he's had 48 pressures, 10 sacks, 20.3% pressure rate, and a 4.2% sack rate. When you look at Sherwood in his career, when he's been asked to get to the quarterback and pass rush, very similar numbers in terms of really, really impressive. 12 pressures, 2.5 sacks, 5.7% sack rate, 22.6% pressure rate. Both these guys, you combine their total times pass rushing, you combine their pressures, combine their pressure rate, they're two players that would be near the top of the league in terms of linebacker duos at getting home to the quarterback. The Lions last year blitzed their linebackers the most in the NFL. The Jets were all the way near the bottom of the NFL in sending their linebackers home as pass rushers. So I think Quincy and Sherwood have very high sack production seasons for their standards. Between Sherwood with the 4, Quincy with the 5, I think you get 9 between the two of them. Who knows? Maybe you get 10 between the two of them. I think Quincy has 1 more than Sherwood. So I'll go 9 there. The rest of the group, more of your other defensive line pieces. I'll go Harrison Phillips with 2 sacks, Jay Tufele 2 sacks, Brandon Stevens, Michael Carter. I think both of those guys as well will have 2 sacks. So I have 4 players having 2 sacks. You're going to see a lot of cornerback blitzes. You're going to see some safety blitzes. I think they're going to blitz Brandon Stevens, Michael Carter a lot. Out of your cornerbacks, I think those will be the ones they send home. Michael Carter, they've sent home a lot during training camp, and it was successful. He had a handful of what would be sacks in a real game. Stevens as well. So I'll give both those guys 2 sacks as well on the season. And then Sauce, I think, will have a sack. I think they'll send Sauce on a cornerback blitz. I've said it a couple times. Why not week number 1 against Aaron Rodgers and the Pittsburgh Steelers? What the Jets did with Sauce a couple years ago, remember, against the Dolphins, and Teddy Bridgewater blitzed in the first play of the game. Send Sauce on a blitz the first play of the game. I would love to see that. I think Sauce will register a sack on a blitz. And then a couple other guys rounding it out. Jawan Briggs, Leonard Taylor, Michael Clemens. I think they'll all have sacks just as your rotational depth defensive lineman. I could maybe see a safety having a sack on a safety blitz, which would maybe get this team to 46. And I rounded all these numbers to even numbers. I didn't do halves here. So Leonard Taylor or Michael Clemens might have a half a sack, and that might open up a safety to have a half a sack as well or whatever. But roughly, I think that's how you're going to see the sack production distributed. Will McDonald, Quinnen, they lead the way. Jermaine a little bit behind them. From a pass rush defensive line perspective, I think your linebackers will get involved. And then you'll have some of those depth defensive tackles, your cleanup sacks, those type of things, and a couple guys in the secondary who I think will be sent home on blitzes. But all in all, this should be a team sack-wise, should be pretty comfortably in the top 10. In terms of interceptions, I think this will be a Jets team that's much higher than they were a year ago. They had 7 interceptions last year, which is extremely, extremely low. 10 less than they had the year prior. In 2023, they had 17. I looked at the Lions last year. They had 16, both in 2023 and 2024. So I think this year, realistically, you look at the Jets and you say, can you get 15 interceptions, let's say, and plus whatever you get in terms of forced fumbles, fumble recoveries, from total forcing turnovers? Can you get 15 picks? I'll go Andre Cisco leads the way with 4. I think Andre Cisco is going to be one of those players, and we've talked about it a lot, where he's going to have weeks where he has really, really good games. He has an interception, maybe 2 interceptions in a single game. And then there's going to be weeks where he's going to want to make you pull your hair out. We saw that against the Giants. He had that really bad lapse in coverage in the preseason, but you also are going to see plays where the safeties are really good in coverage. You're going to see plays where he's going to force turnovers. He's going to get interceptions. He's done that throughout his career. There's going to be a mixed bag. He's going to do things that you're going to be really happy about, and he's going to do things that are going to infuriate you at times. So I think he actually leads the way. I'll go 4 interceptions for Andre Cisco. When you look at his career and previously what he's done from an interception perspective, he's had 8 in his career, and he did have 1 season with 4 in 2023. So he does have experience getting his hand on the football and forcing turnovers. In terms of the rest of the group, I think Sauce has a good interception season. I do. I'm going to go 3 interceptions for Sauce Gardner. I'll go 3 interceptions for Brandon Stevens. Michael Carter, Tony Adams, I'll give 2 to both those guys. And Malachi Moore, I think, has a pick as well. And you could probably throw maybe a linebacker or a safety in there. There's always sometimes one random interception. Who knows? Maybe a defensive lineman pops the ball in the air and it ends up in their arms and you get an interception that way. But just kind of taking a look at the more realistic secondary guys getting picks, I do think Sauce has a good year from an interception perspective. I think the amount of man coverage they're going to have, the amount of blitzing, throwing, quarterbacks kind of just throwing the ball up. Not only is that an opportunity for safeties to run underneath it and haul interceptions, but it'll be an opportunity for Sauce as well. And these corners, all of these corners, Michael Carter, I think, is in line for a really big season. Just the amount of man that this defense is going to run, he excels in that. And I think that's an area where he could potentially lead into a couple interceptions as well. So that's how I think the Jets get their 15. And all in all, I think you look at this Jets team and you look at them and say, okay, they're going to be average on offense, 16th ranked offense. Can you be a top 10 defense? I think realistically, this can be an 8th to 9th ranked defense in the NFL. And from a special teams perspective, can you be a top 12 special teams? Can you be 11? Can you be 12? Can you be 10? Can you be inside the top 10 or at least right on the edge there at number 10? If you can do that, that's your path to victory. Close games, physicality, grinding teams down with your run game, being able to stop the run, winning the time of possession. That's your path to victory. Making a couple game-changing plays on special teams. I do think we're in for a couple big plays on special teams, whether it's a punt block, whether it's a gunner laying a huge hit, ball pops out from the returner, Stiggers, any of those guys. Banjo's got those guys playing with fire. You've seen that during camp. Average kicker play from Nick Folk, and the Jets could potentially stumble into a win this season, a win that they weren't able to get last year with the incompetence at kicker. So those little things, those little details go a long way in predicting what to see from this Jets team this season. All in all, when you look at what to expect and a record prediction before we close things out, appreciate you all who have stayed on here all the way until the end. Longer episode, but we are previewing all aspects of the 2025 season here. I've been kind of debating this a while. For a while, I was at 7-10. The way I look at this schedule, the way I break down this schedule is it's not impossible. There's certainly some rough stretches, but I don't view the Jets schedule, and I said this when it came out, as there's any like gauntlet. And it's not like a gauntlet at any point. Sure, is the early start, is it rough? Yeah, but can you see the Jets getting out of the first 4 games 2-2? For sure. I don't think you look at the first 4 games and say there's no chance, but you also don't look at the first 4 games and say this is a cakewalk, and it's always tough to gauge the back half of the schedule because every year you look at the back half of the schedule and you say, oh, all these games are winnable. And then when those games happen, there's always surprising teams and a team emerges. And instead of what looked like a really easy game at the beginning of the year, looks like a really tough game as the year goes on. I think you break down the Jets schedule this way and you say, can you split against Miami? Can you split against New England? If you can do that, you're 2-2 there. I would love to say you split against Buffalo, but realistically, Buffalo probably sweeps them. So 2-4 in your division. And then when you look at some of on paper, what should be the easier games, Carolina, Atlanta, New Orleans, Jacksonville, you win those games. Cleveland, you win the winnable games. The games that you should take care of business. Games that you are better than some of those teams. Even you want to say Carolina's a better team this year, you get them at home, right? You win those games, that's 5 to 6 to 7 wins. Between the 2 in the division, Carolina, Cleveland, Atlanta, Jacksonville, New Orleans, you have 7. The final couple of wins are going to have to kind of come from some of these toss-up games. Baltimore, Cincy, those are tough, both on the road. Buffalo, right, tough. Can you beat Pittsburgh week 1, though? Now, if you can be 2-2 after the first 4 games, which includes a win against Pittsburgh, and let's say you split Tampa, Miami, and you snag one of these tougher games, whether that's Denver, you want to still throw kind of Dallas in that mix. I don't have very, with Dallas in the trade, Micah Parsons, I don't think you have very high expectations for them this season, and that is a home game, an opportunity there. You see a path for this team to win 8 games, right? Pittsburgh, Miami, New England, those are your 3 to start here. The 2 division, Pittsburgh week 1, right? You throw Carolina in the mix, Atlanta, Jacksonville, New Orleans, that's 7. And then find a way to win a Denver, a Dallas, a Baltimore, Cincy, any of those 4 games. Pick one. Let's say Dallas. You win that game, you get to 8-9. That's kind of your path. That's kind of your blueprint. So I have the Jets going 8-9. For a while, it was 7-10. Maybe it's my early season excitement. I don't think this is a playoff team. I think this team is still ultimately looking for a quarterback in the 2026 draft class. I don't think Fields will do enough to prove he's the guy. And I think they'll end up be drafting. But 8-9, play a physical, competitive brand of football, a brand of football that this fan base can rally around, I think is what you expect this season from this Jets team. Lay the groundwork for a big 2026. That's how I view this season. Be in the conversation in December, finish 8-9. That's my prediction. I hope I'm wrong. I hope this is a 9-8 or 10-7 wild card weekend type of team. But realistically, I think you're looking at 8-9 on the season. Competitive, physical type of football team that falls just a bit short. That's how I view it. So let me know what you think in the comment section down below. What are your expectations for this New York Jets team? I still think they're a bit too top heavy. Depth concerns, 8-9. And that's my prediction. Appreciate you all so much, especially for those of you who have stayed tuned in this entire time. We'll have a lot more content coming your way the rest of the week. Stay tuned. It's Steelers week. Fired up for the season. Let me know in the comment section down below. What are your bold predictions for this season? What are your expectations for this season? Let me know down below. Appreciate you all as always. Until next time, JETS. Jets, Jets, Jets.